I'm deeply grateful beyond belief. Homecoming's never set in. I've never really felt it. The overwhelm of this voyage. I'm deeply honored to be here, but I'm very uncomfortable right now. Only because I believe I'm standing here on behalf of the many, the 300 that sailed these canoes, the 12, 15 captains that took the leadership of these canoes. For the Po navigators that all came together united to recognize that it's time to share to young people. And never, ever let voyaging and navigation ever go extinct. And to all the young ones, no matter how much hardship, no matter how dangerous it was, when we asked them to come as investments, the truest investment of handing off what we learned from the great navigators that are over there in the wall. Because our time is limited, we can count it in 2 hands. We're tired. Voyage put you on your knees. Took you to the bone. Clyde? So? That's why we needed Eddie. At the times we were most afraid, we could look to him to find courage. Eddie came the whole way. Eddie was the most important crew member we had on board. I'm going to be completely inadequate. And then we're going to run out of time and I got to sit down. I'm going to think back at the moment that I was never good enough to be able to express the gratitude of the many to have embraced us the way you have. It never sunk in until I came into the channel and looked around. That constant nagging question that we always have in leadership is, Hōkūleʻa still relevant? Does it still have value? Or is it too old? Has the racing of the 21st century outpaced us so much that things old we don't care about anymore? It's a nagging question. Whether we're going to borrow your young people, take them to sea, and make the promise they're going to come back. It's a nagging question. Well, thank you, Hawaii. Thank you for the moment. Thank you for the 150, 200 canoes are out there, the 1,000 watercrafts. Li'i here to pay respect to all of this. But again, everybody knows the difficult bridge to make. And that's all we are. We're just building bridges. "25 days ago, I received a phone call from a friend. He said, you need to come. Get in your car, you need to come now. I was dreading the phone call. I got in, and you know, there are kind of times when you're just thinking through all these things that you were gifted and all these things that you're blessed with came from extraordinary generation that, by the way, are not in the room. Physically, there's no sign on the chair for them. But we bring them in spirit. I drive to this place of hospice. Go into a very quiet, cold room. Meet a hospice nurse that said, you know, he's too far gone. You're too late. He's non-responsive. I said, okay. Let me sit with him privately. Do you mind leaving the room? I sat down and held the hand of Dr. Ben Finney, the last of the great visionaries, the great pioneers, the great navigators on the wall. I held his hand and I talked to him. I said, hey, Ben, your children are on the ocean right now. Pomai is the captain. Kailani is the navigator. They're coming home. And I said, they're coming home from Tahiti, our homeland. He squeezed my hand. And I said, they're on Yova'a, Hōkūleʻa. And he squeezed my hand because he knows. 2 days later, we lose him. There's no names on the chairs for the 5 on the wall. But what there is extraordinary stories of a lady. I don't know who she was. I was told the story. She was a woman professor in the University of Hawaii system, and she was Hawaiian. 1958. You can count the Hawaiian professors, 1950s, on one hand. Lili Kalau came a long way. He gave Dr. Ben Finney a book. He said, read this. It's all wrong. It's all wrong. And you, as an anthropologist that believe in the ancient voyages of the Polynesian, you need to change that. It was a decade later that there would be a phone call, not on our phone lines, but a long-distance phone call from Santa Barbara University to a painter in Chicago, Herb Kawaianui Kane. They would talk about building a voyaging canoe. I always wondered, how come the phone call wasn't here? How come it wasn't here? How come we couldn't see it? Well, go look what we teach in our schools. Hawaiian was outlawed by policy in the public schools. Private teachers had the privilege and the authorization to beat the kids. I know, my grandmother was at Kamehameha. You graduate from high school, have no idea where your ancestors come from, have no idea how they got here, had no idea that they were the greatest navigators and voyagers and explorers on the face of the earth. How come? Kane, Finney, have a dream, include Tommy Holmes. They bring it in. They launch a voyaging canoe, and they gave it to us. They gave it to us. The question, what will we do with it? The other miracle with Hōkūleʻa, do you know that when they were hunting around the biggest nation on earth called Polynesia, they couldn't find one traditional navigator. When they look at Melanesia, they couldn't find a single deep-sea navigator. They turned to the small islands, which we call Micronesia today. In my understanding, there are only 6. And by miracle, a Peace Corps worker, Mike McCoy, said, hey, you want a navigator? He's 5 miles down the road, living on a Thompson Cromwell UH research ship, teaching professors at the university how to catch ako with traditional lures. And he was the youngest. Sometimes I look back and think through What if Hōkūleʻa waited a decade or 2 decades to be born? What if we waited? What if it got to the point that Mao was not strong enough to do 2 miracles? Pull Kahiki Nui out of the sea, 1976. Thank you, Buffalo, Billy, Shorty, John Cruz. Please stand. Please stand. Thank you. That was a time of confusion in 76. Leadership was compromised with a society that there were those who loved the canoe, prayed for it, those who didn't believe that Hawaiian stuff had any value in its own homeland. And there was those that feared this canoe because it's going to change everything. The arrival of these 4 men that are left, the last of the crew of 17 that are left, changed the world when it entered the harbor in Papeete. Brought Pacific people together, brought the family back together, and Mao found it like the miracle. But even the greater miracle was Mao when he came back for 30 years and took every one of us, too many to mention, by the hand like a child, yanked you through the window of time into the old ocean. And nobody else could do that on the whole earth. That's the miracle. Then he stayed with us and trained us, never went home, never left our side, so that we wouldn't die at sea. And the list goes on, but on the picture, I don't know. My greatest navigator is my father. Grew up poor, knew the pain of poverty. Come home, and there'd be all these children in the house. They don't know their names, they're strangers. My father won't talk about these painful stories, but his older brother would tell me. Yeah, we get these children that have no home, no roof, they're not going to eat dinner tonight. And Hawaiian family take you in, call them hanai. These are your brothers and sisters. They will sleep with you tonight. My uncle would tell me, we would watch, and when their parents, they would share the food for dinner, and the parents drank water. Tomorrow you eat guava. There will be no breakfast. My father felt in a very deep way the greatest injustice of all is the neglected and abused child. The greatest. Underage, LST, landing, Normandy, the bloody beaches. Many died. Father told him, you go. You fight for the dirt of your country. Hawaii ne. You make shame, no come home. My father was courageous. 400 miles French soil, 1 mile from the German border. Shot in the head by a German sniper. White snow, green fatigues. Who was in a tree. It's a long story of courage, a long story of standing up for what you believe. But my father's olelo would begin in the hospital room because a bullet went to the left side of his head, took out his left eye, exited his nose, crushed this side of his face, and didn't die. When they bandaged his eyes for 2 years to try to protect it and save it, said Nainoa. It was in the black blindness of the bandage, that I could understand the power of vision. In the vision, it was talking to yourself about responsibility. What are you going to stand up for? In some very dark days, in the time of Hōkūleʻa, we celebrate accomplishment, we remember the hard times. When Eddie set out, we were capsized in the gale, no communications. Call you from Tahiti in 30 days. Nobody knew we were upside down in the gale. And helpless. Eddie, the greatest waterman on the earth, had a surfboard tied to the rail. We turn over at midnight, the light comes up, and in the light there's no hope. And Eddie, it was so windy that you could not talk to you in the gale. Everybody's perched on one hull, the other hull is submerged. Waves went from 12 to 15 feet, knock you off, maybe every 20 seconds. In the north wind, hypothermia is real. And nobody knows. And there's Eddie. You can't hear what he's saying, but you know what he's asking the captain to let him go. Sunrise, the captain says, no, stay with the ship. Layton, it's the cardinal rule. But nobody knows. And you're going south, quick, in the gale. Every single hydraulic swell would just carry you down another 10 feet and another 10 feet. Midday, you see him, mid-morning. Someone puts a black knitted bagger on his waist, puts some oranges inside, a bag of poi, a life jacket. Eddie's going to go. And Clyde saw, I swam with him that last time, and he had to go. He had to go. Eddie had the dream that we're going to go down to Kaikinoi. We're going to pull it out of the sea with Hōkūleʻa when we bring pride and dignity back to our ancestors, and then we're going to give it to our children. That's why he had to go, because Hōkūleʻa was the light. And it was upside down. We call it ehukai. Every time a wave turns on the ocean, it kicks out salt. In the gale, it's so strong. Later, you know, it's like fog. You could not see the island of Oahu. You could barely see Kamalo, and you could barely see Lanaihale. We were out there, going south, in the gale. Nobody else is out there. Eddie had poor eyesight. Just so you know, when we talk about courage, and standing up what you need to stand up for, like my father would say, that act of Eddie on a surfboard, paddling to an island he cannot see, was the greatest act of courage of all time. Clyde, Saul, please stand up. Where's Clyde? Saul? But in the time then when there was so much question, my dad came, and he was the one that provided us, took us, he said, picked us up off the ground. Get off the ground. Stand up for something. My father said, which is cornerstone to that departure moment, if you believe in something, if you believe that you need to turn things to the justice, to make things pono, to make things right, then you should have the courage to try. Lieutenant Colonel Lacey Veach is not up here, but I'm bringing him into the room. Best friend, troubled about the blue planet, the blue island Earth. Keikio Kaina, Kuaina, Hawaii's second astronaut. My opinion, Hawaii's greatest explorer of all time. We would sit at the 6,000-foot elevation in the foothills of Mauna Kea, Mauna Loa, and Hōkūleʻa. In the black lava, it would absorb all light to bring the stars close, to strengthen your ability to imagine and vision. And he would talk about this island we call Earth, that there's no other one like it. So how come, if we are so intelligent, if we are so brilliant, and if we are so accomplished at doing anything we want to do, why are we putting our children's future in risk? These are instructions from all these great navigators. Lacey would say, you have no idea, Nainoa, how beautiful